Well, good morning everybody. This is dear Mama Sal on Thursday. Yay! I don't work Fridays. Very short week for me. Worked Monday, a Tuesday off, worked Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'm off again. That's good news and bad news. Because, you know, the work doesn't stop accordingly. That's what I found. However, a very pretty day. It's cloudless, which is beautiful, but you learn in this neck of the woods when it's cloudless it also is pretty chilly. So today we're actually still at 2 degrees, although I believe it went way below that last night, which would make it 35 in American language. But really a beautiful, beautiful day. You can probably see it as I drive. Probably see the blue sky, and in fact it's, I think, what everybody's ideal winter day would look like, although we're still in autumn, and I'd like to remind the weather god that this is autumn and you can keep the really nasty stuff away, please. I only allow you to have anything like that sort of in certain months of the year, and this is not one of them. And it's not that I like to control things, it's just like, excuse me, it's autumn. You know, autumn, let me just explain to the weather gods that autumn is when you let the pretty leaves drop, or actually turn nicely and then drop miraculously, followed by a huge wind that takes all the dead leaves off my property as far as possible. Actually, it's been a good day. What will the word of the day be? Well, we're still talking about who's pressing your buttons, because that is part of what I really wanted to concentrate on today. Interesting. Somebody wrote to me this morning, or whenever they wrote to me, I don't know, but I saw it this morning. Apropos of, that's upmarket way of saying in regard to, apropos of the landing on the comet. And I thought made a very valid point, which was, with all that needs to be done in the world, you know, why waste so much money doing that? Especially as it took, 10 years of scientists and everything else. And if you had a major illness and you didn't have the money to deal with it, or if you had a child that was sick and didn't have the money to be able to help that child, I can, or anything like that, right? Or if you lived in a house and couldn't afford heat, I can totally understand that point of view. And it doesn't have to be that dramatic, everything in between of that. I totally understood the thinking, which is, why did we waste that much money? And then one of the things in who's pressing your buttons, I guess, that you need to look at is, I could have looked at that and said, oh gosh, I misspoke yesterday about my comments about landing the washing machine looking thing on to the comet. Well, I then have to tell you that I immediately thought, what was my thinking when I was talking about that? Where was I in my mind? And funny enough, I was in totally the opposite direction. Rightly or wrongly, it doesn't really matter. It's not about who's right. It's just, how was I looking at this? I looked at it that we've seen enough of the space movies to know that quite often the things that we imagined 20 years ago become reality 20, 30 years later. When Jules Verne wrote, his stories about space and 20 Leagues Under the Sea and things like that, quite honestly, it was far-fetched, and ridiculous. Except it wasn't, as we're now finding out. It was visionary for the time. So here's the point that I want to make, which is, I believe, I don't know, I wasn't in the meetings, but I believe the reason that we did this incredible experiment, if you like, landing something on a comet, was multi-faceted. It had to do with, sure, let's find out more about the comet and what its composition is, so we understand more about where we came from and what the real Big Bang Theory was, if you like. But there was another, in my view, another reason for it, which I believe was defense. Our defense. How many of these science fiction movies have we had where there is a comet heading towards Earth and we're about to be destroyed? And everything they send up fails. But what if many years ahead of time, because they can track these trajectories that these comets are taking, what if many years ahead of time they can send up a washing machine to land on the comet and blend the darn thing up so that it will not destroy Earth? My question here is, would it be worth the money if your daughter was on Earth? I guess what I'm trying to say is, in terms of not ruining your day with any one thing, it's really important to have the ability to be able to see both sides of the story. Somebody once told me that the trick in all of this is to have balance, to be able to see one side and then the other side and then come back to the middle in some way where you can see both. Now, you may need to make a decision which will put you on one side or the other, but before you do, make sure you see both sides, because that's really important, because it stops you going off into, if you like, fantasy, that there is only one side to this, and there very rarely is only one side. So who's pressing your buttons? Well, at the moment we have a lot of stuff going on, let's say in Ferguson, for those of you who are following the news there, where we're about to get a grand jury choosing to indict or not to indict the police officer. Now, one way or another, that is going to spark a lot of people. It's going to press a lot of buttons. If they decide to indict the police officer and take him to trial, that will upset a lot of police officers who see that what he did was to protect himself. And if they don't, then there are going to be an awful lot of people in Ferguson that are going to be very angry. And going to be a lot of reaction to that too. In the meantime, the grand jury is taking far, far longer than normal. And when you listen to the pundits, the people who seem to have opinions on these things, the reason they're taking so long is they don't want to make a wrong call here. Because they know that they could be responsible for all sorts of things going down if they make the wrong call. Now, if you make the right call and all sorts of things go down, that's one thing. But if you make the wrong call and riots happen or terrible things happen, then, you know, you'd have to live with that for the rest of your life. And it's really important that they make the right call. So, when you look at these things, it's about what we do to bring ourselves to the next level. For example, if you only concentrate on the one side and not look for the balance of it, you will probably always be right in your mind, and the rest of the world will always be wrong in your mind. And I want to tell you from my experience, I used to be ruler of the universe in my little mind. I don't know if any of you relate to that. I used to think that absolutely everything I had to say was, pretty informative. Well, it is. But I really did. And then I realized, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion with my experience, with my knowledge, with my length of time on the planet. It doesn't make it the right opinion, it makes it my opinion. And I am entitled to that, as is everybody else entitled to theirs. And so, what I would ask you all to do is to have a really good look at, are you being fair? So whether it's talking to your son or daughter, whether it's reacting to something that your parent may do, and it doesn't matter how old you are when this one, if you're lucky enough to have your parents still alive, whatever it is that you're reacting to, make sure that you take the time to see both sides. I'm sorry to keep wiping my eyes, but my one eye is watering. I'm not sure if it's the sun or whether I've got some eye makeup in it. But I'm not crying, that's what I'm trying to say. So when you look at who's pressing your buttons, almost anybody can press our buttons. And as I've said time and time again, it can be as little as a look that presses your buttons. If you're already having what I call a reactionary day, a couple of things have triggered you already, and somebody gives you a funny look, you're going, why did they look at me like that? What did I do wrong? And because that's the same look you've seen from somebody else just before they got really angry at you. Or you'll hear a voice tone from somebody. One of the greatest bits of advice that I had somewhere along the line was somebody saying to me, get curious. If somebody now gives me a really funny look and says something that seems a bit weird, I'll leave it for a while because I don't want the emotion to be there. I'll leave it for an hour or two, and then I will try and go back and say, hey, when I said A, B, and C, I saw you gave me a really strange look. Did I do something to offend you, or, And it's amazing the answers that people will come up with. They go, oh gosh, no, I was just shocked because I didn't expect to hear that, or whatever. Whatever it is that they reacted to. And sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. We had a situation at work where we have a special heating system that is locked in. In other words, you can't just go and up the heat when you want to, right? It's locked in a special way. And that was a great idea, except in the last couple of days, it's been cold at work. And you could feel it at your feet. I mean, I'm wearing boots and my feet were cold, and there were people literally sitting at their desks, rubbing their hands, and I was walking around going, are you that cold? Yes. Okay. Well, I know that I can't go anywhere and just press a button and change the heat. So what I decided to do was to check it out. So I wrote a quick note to the boss and said, hey, I just want to tell you it's getting pretty cool in a couple of offices, enough that people are really feeling it at the floor level. And some people are feeling it as high as hand level. Is there any way we can up the heat a little? That's all I asked. Oh, and I think what I said was, this is not just me, I've heard this from a number of people now. And so, I wanted him to make sure that this wasn't just an individual request. This was, a lot of people were feeling it. And the interesting thing was that immediately we're having the air condition and heating people come in to check our system. Why isn't it keeping the right temperature? So you look at it and you go, well, it's a case of, if you don't say anything, it's not going to get any better, is it? And then everybody will just keep moaning, and people will get more and more frustrated, and then their work will be affected, and so it goes on, because it's like things start to stack up. I've always said that you are the way you drive your car. If you drive your car in a pretty relaxed way, the chances are you're a pretty relaxed person. But if you drive your car, and I've been with some people who do that, like it's a weapon, and consider everybody else on the road is your personal enemy, then it tells me a lot about your state of mind. When people cut me off, I could get very triggered. I could have them press my buttons, and I choose to say 9 times out of 10, you're obviously in a bigger hurry than I am. Now, can I say, listen, you little so-and-so, just because you didn't get up in time is not my problem? Of course I could say that. But you don't know if they're rushing to get to a hospital to see a sick child. You really don't know. Now, it could be that they just are a very rude person, and the chances are that would be true. But I refuse to give them power. Most of the time. There have been the occasional ones, I must admit, where my language has not been what you might say pristine in my description of them. But I try to keep that under control. So as you look at today, think about the people who wake up in a lot of pain every day. And we have a lot of them who are viewers. And that could be pain because of their medical condition, or it could be pain, emotional pain, because of the condition of their child. And yet every day they get up and they do what they need to do to make it through the day. And if you want better coping mechanisms, perhaps sorry, just saw an ambulance at a business, and it seems early for there to be an industrial accident. But I then realized there is no right time for an industrial accident. And I just hope that person is okay. Yeah, if you want to have better coping mechanisms, perhaps the best people to speak to are the people in your life that you know are struggling. Struggling with illness, struggling with pain, struggling with situations. I don't know about the rest of you, but whenever I see a hurricane and see them interview people who have lost everything, when people whose house has been destroyed or whatever, I'm always amazed at those few people that just look at the camera and say, it was just stuff. My family is safe. And you go, wow. That takes somebody who really understands, the reality. If you look at so many of the people who are truly happy, they don't have a lot of stuff. And so if the lack of stuff is making you unhappy, you may want to look at that a second time and not have that press your buttons anymore. I used to spend a fortune every year planting my garden so the neighbors would think I was a great gardener. Really. I don't do that anymore. I planted rose trees, it looks very pretty. You know what I mean? I've just stopped trying to impress the neighbors. I like roses, and the rest of my front garden is all natural stuff that comes up. And I sort of, play with. But I'm no longer spend a fortune trying to have the perfect garden. I think that everything can press your buttons. If you are triggered enough in any one day, the fact that a bird flies over and poops on your car, if you're lucky enough to have a car, can really set you off. It can be the last straw, because you've had so many other things that have triggered you that day that just becomes ridiculous. You go into almost a paranoid state. What else is going to go wrong? It's just a birdie. Desperately needed a quick poo. He didn't actually start flying that morning and going, okay, now whose car can I target today? They don't think like that. They just go, oh, need to poo, done. It isn't that big a deal. But it is if you have everything pressing your buttons. I have watched incredibly interesting things happen with people who are very easily triggered. And really, I am very grateful for the fact that I have taught myself not to be quite as reactionary as I used to be. And I wish that for you today.